Right, this is going to be a little mini series to get us through, about basically get us through the next month and something to do and something to talk about. And what we'd do is look at each player individually and how they are, basically what's their future at West Ham. What's their future at West Ham? What's their future with the current manager? What's their future in the system? And so on and so forth. Basically, how do they fit into David Moyes' plans for the upcoming season, which is going to be upon us before we know it. So, there we go. Short videos, have a little chat, let me know what you think down below. So I think the first one to really start off with is probably the hero of the hour, which is Michail Antonio. Now, Michail Antonio has had a really interesting career. You have to say, whatever it was, 7.5 million from Nottingham Forest, was an absolute steal. Look at it now. He has represented excellent value. He's almost gone a couple of times. Roy Hodgson really fancied him. He's tried to get him twice, and you could understand why. And it's really funny because I've always thought that Pellegrini was unconvinced about Michail Antonio. I really do. I thought he probably looked at him, thought he was a bit crude, a bit cumbersome, and probably thought this player is not for me at all. But Antonio worked himself into such a position with Pellegrini that Pellegrini realised, even albeit as a substitute towards the end, he thought, I actually need this guy. This guy's winning me games. This guy, whilst he might not be my normal. I think Pellegrini might have found Santi Cazorla, for instance. I think he might have unearthed him when he was in Spain. Whilst he might not be Santi Cazorla, who is equally good with the right and the left foot and a low centre of gravity and all the rest of it, Antonio's qualities were such that Pellegrini had to find a place for him in the team. So he was retained on. He didn't get sold on. And I think Crystal Palace came in on 2 separate occasions, yet he's still here. And he's played for us at right back. He's played for us right wing. He's played left wing, inside forwards, or straight down the middle. Not bad versatility for a player. And you look at his qualities, and I think a lot of times they're qualities that are frowned on. And I often say he's not Ronaldinho, right? But there's a lot to be said for strength, determination, work rate, pace. He's got all of those in abundance. But I think if you just concentrate on those, I think it's easy to ignore or easy to miss that actually quite often when Antonio does try a little trick, it does work out. He can go past a player, and it ain't all strength. He'll try a little drag back. He'll try and do his thing. He goes through. Look, can Antonio shoot the ball, basically, out of London Stadium, over the orbital, and possibly into orbit itself? Never mind the orbital. Yes, he can, particularly when he's on the right and he checks some of his left foot, and you think, just don't. But that's not to say he doesn't have finishing technique. You don't score the number of goals that he's just scored and throughout his career. And perhaps I should have looked at his career stats before doing this video, but they turned not to be 2 short videos when I do that. You don't get to do that if you can't kick the ball, if you can't control the ball, if you haven't got the good instinct, if you can't basically position your body in a way. I think a couple of the goals that he scored when Gerard Bowen basically passed the ball across with crosses, should I say, that were along the ground, probably highlighted his finishing technique quite well. I've seen players miss those, you know, and it was quite sure. And one of them was just flicked in quite nonchalantly with the confidence of a striker. And the more he plays there, the better he gets. So what's the future hold for Michail Antonio at West Ham United under David Moyes? But, well, now we know we're a Premier League team, he stays. I think he's a mainstay. I think he will continue. I really do. I think he will continue to play up front quite a lot. But I think sometimes Moyes will switch between a 1 and a 2. You remember just before lockdown, there were times when he was playing Haller and Antonio up front as a 2. I think he's still going to be a utility man. But what I think might happen next season is I think we may well see Antonio appearing on the left side of midfield, on the left wing, a bit more than we have. I think Fornals plays in that position for 2 reasons. I think number one, he plays in that position because Moyes knows he needs to have at least someone else with decent passing technique in the team, and I don't mean that has a high pass completion percentage rate, because the centre backs tend to have that because they make easier passes. I mean somebody that can open up a defence with a pass. I think that's why Fornals is in there primarily, and he's shoehorning him into a position that doesn't suit him, but he needs someone in there to do that. The other reason is I think he can rely on him. He does a lot of miles, he works hard, and he tracks back, and he gives the left back some support at a time when we're not particularly good at left back. I think fast forward a little bit with a new left back, then I don't see any reason for Fornals to be there. And I think actually, as long as you've addressed the passing situation somewhere else in midfield, and I think he will, and we'll get on to Noble on a separate video, but that little number 10 role that Mark Noble's been occupying, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Fornals taken up or somebody else. That deals with the passing on the inside. I think if you can then see a situation where Michail Antonio is starting to operate from the left wing, and then he's giving you that work rate clearly. He runs himself into the ground game after game. I also look at... So I think he covers the left back, but the new left back, if he's been scouted and highlighted properly and is an improvement on Cresswell and Masuaku, which we'd expect, otherwise what's the point in buying one? Then obviously that left back doesn't need as much protection as Cresswell has in the last few games when basically everyone's attacked us down the wing. I also think that it looks like it's going to be a hallmark of David Moyes' reign are set pieces, and just swinging the ball over, crosses as well. And why not? I think we're going to have situations whereby the fullbacks, so the right fullback will be right-footed, the left fullback will be left-footed. They go down, they cross over. So they overlap. So I think you'll see that. I remember seeing it with Seamus Coleman and Leighton Baines stick in my mind. And I would use those two as an example just purely because... because he had a chance to build things at Everton, so you very much felt that they were the fullbacks that he wanted there rather than a quick fix and inherited ones. He inherited players at Man U, Real Sociedad, West Ham, Sunderland, all inherited players. Whereas I think the wingers, I don't think he minds them cutting in, and then so you'll have a left-footed player on the right and you could have a right-footed player on the left as wingers. I don't think he minds. I think he wants them to cut upside. The fullbacks go over. My point is, expect to see crosses, whether they be in swingers from the winger or a more orthodox cross from the fullbacks. We're going to see Souček arriving late into the box to get those headers, but we're also going to see Antonio going in there as well. So I think he gets retained for that, because whilst you might lose a little bit of the passing, which you previously had when Paulo Fornals played there, I also think you're going to gain something else, which is if we're attacking down the right, and let's say Bowen checks in on his left foot and swings the ball over, I think at that point, if Antonio's playing at the left wing, he moves into the far post and he is basically getting into the box and available for a header. And I can see a situation where Moyes uses Sebastian Haller for exactly that reason. I can really see him scouting players and identifying players that are tall, and that being a massive threat. He spoke about West Ham being a soft touch, Moyes. I think he maybe looks at it and he thinks, okay, how can I stop being a soft touch? Well, I'll get some bigger guys in there. Well, big surprise. David Moyes wants big players in there. And we're going to cause people bother at set pieces. Now, whilst Michail Antonio might not be the biggest player in the world in terms of his height, he's as strong as anyone. He's a nightmare to mark for centre-backs, and he has scored a lot of headers. He will always be a threat. But it's quite interesting because the defenders will always pick up Sebastian Haller first. They will always pick up Souček first. At set plays, someone will be on Diop, someone will be on Ogbonna. Yet not every team has 6 or 7 tall players. And Michail Antonio coming in from the far post, I just think that is going to quite possibly be a really good position for him to come in off the left wing. So, in summary, I think Michail Antonio's future at West Ham is very, very secure under David Moyes. And even if Crystal Palace did come in, I wouldn't want to see him go, quite simply. Right, anyway, that was the first of our players. I'm going to be doing every single... I say every single player possibly won't do Connor Coventry or whatnot, but every player that I think in the West Ham squad that is going to play some part somewhere or another. Some may come, some may go. Some may be bit part players, and those are going to be interesting ones as well. But I think that's for the first videos. Michail Antonio. Michail Antonio stays.
Yeah, yo, front doors, motherfucker. Open it wide up. How you mean? Yeah. MC step up. What? Apocalypse alert. Yo, eyes open, closed, windows to us all day. No cars to feel like road tolls. Call it freeway. Front doors, close them back doors shut like the front gate. I'm the pool boy, rude boy, bitch, make a mistake.